My stepmom smirked and said, "You don't pay for anything in this house." So I packed my bags and left without saying a word. Weeks later, she was panicking over unpaid bills she never knew I'd been covering, and somehow I was still the one she blamed. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now let's dive into today's story. Mary Collins stood in the doorway of her childhood bedroom, holding a single cardboard box. The room smelled like old carpet and the lavender spray her mother used to use before bed. That scent was fading now, 2 years after the funeral, replaced by something sharper, something that belonged to someone else. The house in Ashfield, Ohio had never been large. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that opened into a living room with a sagging couch. The kind of place where you could hear every conversation through the walls, where privacy was a concept more than a reality. Lake Erie sat 3 blocks away, gray and cold most of the year, and the wind carried the smell of fish and rust from the old steel plants that used to employ half the town. Mary was 21 when her mother collapsed in the grocery store, a brain aneurysm, gone before the ambulance arrived. The funeral was small, attended mostly by neighbors who brought casseroles and spoke in hushed voices about how sudden it all was. Her father, Tom Collins, sat in the front pew and didn't cry. He just stared at the closed casket with empty eyes, his work-worn hands folded in his lap. After the funeral, Mary had packed a bag at her apartment across town and driven back to the house. She found her father sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. He hadn't turned on any lights. The bills were scattered across the surface, unopened. "Dad," she'd said quietly. He looked up. His face was gray. "I don't know how to do this without her," he said. Mary set her bag down. "I'll stay for a while." He didn't argue, didn't thank her, just nodded and went back to staring at nothing. That was 2 years ago. She told herself it was temporary, just until he got back on his feet, just until he could function again. But grief didn't work on a timeline, and Tom Collins was the kind of man who buried his feelings under work. He picked up extra shifts with the county maintenance department, fixing roads and clearing storm drains. He left early and came home late, smelling like asphalt and sweat. Mary took over everything else. She paid the bills, bought the groceries, kept the house from falling apart. She worked full-time in payroll at Hendrick Trucking, a company that hauled freight across the Midwest. The job was steady, boring, and paid enough that she could cover her share of expenses and still save a little. Then Tom met Valerie. Mary first heard about her 6 months after the funeral. Tom mentioned her casually one evening while Mary was cooking dinner. "There's a woman at the diner," he said. "Valerie. She's been asking about me." Mary stirred the pasta. "That's nice." "She lost her husband a few years back," Tom continued. "Car accident. She says she understands what I'm going through." Mary glanced at him. He looked younger somehow, less hollow. There was something in his voice she hadn't heard in months, hope. "You should see her," Mary said. Tom nodded slowly. "Yeah, maybe I will." They dated for a year. Valerie worked part-time at a dental office on the other side of town, answering phones and scheduling appointments. She was 43, blonde, with a sharp smile and a habit of tilting her head when she listened. She wore perfume that smelled like vanilla and something chemical, and she always dressed like she was going somewhere important, even when she wasn't. Mary met her 3 weeks into the relationship. Valerie came to the house for dinner, bringing a store-bought pie and a bottle of wine. She shook Mary's hand and held it a second too long, her eyes scanning Mary's face like she was cataloging details. "Tom talks about you all the time," Valerie said. "You've been such a help to him." "I'm just glad he's doing better," Mary replied. Valerie smiled. It must be nice living at home. No rent, no worries. The comment landed wrong, but Mary let it slide. She told herself Valerie was just making conversation. The wedding happened fast. Tom proposed after 8 months, and they got married at the courthouse with 2 witnesses. Valerie moved in the following weekend, bringing 3 suitcases and a set of decorative pillows that immediately appeared on the couch. At first, Valerie was polite. She asked Mary about her job, complimented her cooking, and thanked her for keeping the house so organized. But there was always something underneath. A tone, a pause, a question that sounded innocent but wasn't. "How much do you make at that trucking company?" Valerie asked one evening, folding laundry in the living room. "Enough," Mary said. "Enough for what?" "To get by." Valerie smiled. "You're lucky you don't have rent. Most people your age are drowning." Mary didn't respond. She learned early that Valerie's questions weren't looking for answers. They were looking for openings. Over the next few months, Valerie settled into the house like she'd always been there. She rearranged the furniture, replaced the curtains, and hung photos of herself and Tom on the walls. Mary's mother's pictures came down one by one, quietly relocated to a box in the garage. Tom didn't notice, or if he did, he didn't say anything. Valerie started making rules. The washing machine could only be used on certain days. Mary's day was Thursday, and if she missed it, she had to wait another week. The kitchen had a new schedule, too. Valerie cooked on weekends, and Mary was expected to eat what was prepared or fend for herself. Groceries became a point of tension. Valerie scrutinized every item Mary bought, commenting on waste and unnecessary spending. "Do you really need that?" Valerie asked one afternoon, watching Mary unload milk from the car. "I drink it," Mary said. "Tom and I don't. Maybe you should buy your own." "I do buy my own." Valerie's smile was thin. "Just seems like a lot, that's all." Mary started keeping her groceries separate, labeling them with her name. It felt absurd, but it was easier than arguing. The bills, however, were a different problem. Tom had always been careless with money. Not reckless, just disorganized. He paid what he remembered and forgot the rest. Before her mother died, Mary's mom had handled everything, keeping track of due dates and late fees with a spiral notebook and a cup of pens by the phone. After the funeral, Mary took over without thinking about it. She logged into the accounts, updated the payment methods to her checking account, and set up automatic withdrawals. It was easier that way. Tom didn't have to think about it, and the bills got paid on time. Valerie never asked about the bills. She assumed Tom was handling them, or maybe she didn't care. Either way, the lights stayed on, the water ran, and the property taxes got paid every year. Mary made sure of it. She kept a folder in her room with printed statements. Every payment was documented. She told herself it was insurance, in case anyone ever questioned her contributions. But she also knew she was keeping score, even if no one else was. One evening in late summer, Mary came home from work to find Valerie in the kitchen, sorting through a stack of mail. Envelopes were scattered across the counter. Electric, water, property tax notice. Valerie picked up the tax notice and laughed. "Look at this," she said, waving it. "Your dad's been letting this pile up." Mary set her bag down. "I've been handling it." Valerie glanced at her, amused. "Handling it how?" "Paying it." Valerie's smile widened. "You mean your dad's been paying it?" "No," Mary said carefully. "I mean I've been paying it." Valerie looked at the notice again, then back at Mary. Her expression didn't change. "You really like pretending these matter, don't you?" Mary felt something cold settle in her chest. "They're overdue." "They're fine," Valerie said dismissively. She dropped the envelope back on the counter and leaned against it, arms crossed. "You don't pay for anything in this house, Mary. Let's not confuse ourselves." Mary stared at her. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Outside, a car drove past, and a dog barked once, sharp and distant. "I've been paying the bills for 2 years," Mary said slowly. "Your dad pays the bills," Valerie corrected. "You live here for free." Mary wanted to argue. She wanted to pull up the bank statements and show her line by line. But something in Valerie's tone stopped her. It wasn't just dismissive. It was certain. Valerie truly believed it. She had constructed a version of reality where Mary was a freeloader, a burden, someone who owed them for every meal and every night under their roof. Mary turned and walked to her room. She closed the door quietly, sat on the edge of her bed, and opened her laptop. The bills were all there, organized in folders. Electric, water, property taxes, insurance. Every account had her name, her email, her checking account attached. She scrolled through 2 years of payments, adding up the total in her head. It was more than she expected. Thousands. Enough to have moved out a dozen times over. But she hadn't moved out. She'd stayed because her father needed her. Because the house would have fallen apart without her. Because grief was heavy and loss was real and family was supposed to mean something. Valerie didn't see family when she looked at Mary. She saw an inconvenience. A reminder that Tom had a life before her. Someone who needed to be managed, controlled, and eventually removed. Mary closed the laptop. She sat in the quiet for a long time, staring at the wall. Then she made a decision. She canceled every automatic payment. Electric, water, property taxes, all of it. She updated her address to a P.O. box she'd opened years ago and rerouted every statement. Then she began packing. She moved methodically, folded clothes into boxes, wrapped books in old T-shirts, took down the few pictures she'd kept on her dresser, her mother's wedding ring, which Tom had given her after the funeral, went into a small jewelry box. Every document with her name on it, birth certificate, social security card, tax returns, went into a fireproof folder. She didn't rush. There was no dramatic exit planned, no confrontation. She packed like someone preparing for a trip, calm and efficient. Tom came home late that night. Mary heard his truck pull into the driveway, the engine coughing before it shut off. He came through the front door and dropped his keys on the counter. Valerie greeted him from the living room, and their voices blurred together into the background noise of the house. Mary zipped up the last box and stacked it with the others near her closet. Then she lay down on the bed, fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. The house settled around her, creaking in familiar places. She knew every sound, the way the pipes knocked when the heat kicked on, the rattle of the window in the bathroom, the squeak of the third step from the bottom. She'd grown up here. Her mother had died here, in a sense. And now she was leaving. She felt nothing. At 4 a.m, Mary woke to her alarm. The house was silent. She dressed in the dark, pulling on jeans and a hoodie, and began carrying boxes to her car. It took 3 trips. The car was a 10-year-old Honda with a dent in the passenger door and a broken radio. It smelled like fast food and old coffee. She loaded everything into the back seat and trunk, then went back inside one last time. Her room was empty except for the furniture. The bed was made. The desk was clear. She stood in the doorway and took one last look. Then she closed the door and walked down the hallway. Tom's bedroom door was cracked open. She could hear him snoring softly, the rhythmic sound of deep sleep. She thought about leaving a note. She thought about saying goodbye. Instead, she left the house key on the kitchen counter and walked out. The drive to her new apartment took 15 minutes. It was a small 1-bedroom above a laundromat on the east side of town. The rent was cheap because the building was old and the neighborhood was rough. But it was hers. She parked in the narrow lot behind the building and carried her boxes up the stairs. By 6 a.m., she was unpacking in silence. The call came 2 days later. Mary was at work, staring at a spreadsheet and trying to reconcile a payroll error when her phone buzzed. Valerie's name appeared on the screen. She let it go to voicemail. The second call came 10 minutes later, then a third. Mary stepped outside during her lunch break and listened to the voicemails in her car. The first one was terse. "Mary, call me back. We need to talk." The second was sharper. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this isn't funny." The third was furious. "The power's out. Call me right now." Mary deleted all 3 and went back inside. That evening, Tom called. She answered on the fourth ring. "Hi, Dad." "Mary." His voice was strained. "Where are you?" "I moved out." There was a long pause. In the background, she could hear Valerie's voice, high and insistent, though she couldn't make out the words. "Why didn't you tell me?" Tom asked. "I didn't think I needed to." "Valerie says you—" He stopped, like he was choosing his words carefully. "She says you're doing this to hurt us." Mary leaned back against the kitchen counter of her new apartment. The space was small and bare, the walls yellowed from years of cigarette smoke. But it was quiet. No one was telling her when to do laundry or commenting on her groceries. "I've been paying the bills, Dad," she said quietly. "All of them. For 2 years." "What do you mean, paying the bills?" "Electric, water, property taxes. I set up automatic payments after Mom died. You never asked, so I never brought it up." Silence. "I canceled them when I left," Mary continued. "You can check the bank statements. My name's on everything." "I don't understand," Tom said. "Why would you do that without telling me?" "Because you needed help," Mary said. "And I was there." Valerie's voice rose in the background, sharp and demanding. Tom's voice became muffled, like he'd covered the phone. Mary could hear them arguing, the words indistinct but the tone unmistakable. When Tom came back on the line, he sounded tired. "She says you've been freeloading," he said. "She says you never contributed." "Check the statements, Dad." "I will." He hung up. Mary set the phone down and stared at it for a long moment. Then she went back to unpacking. The story spread faster than she expected. Ashfield was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business. News traveled through family networks, church groups, and shift changes at the diner. By the end of the week, half the town had heard some version of what happened. Mary abandoned them, left without warning, stopped paying rent. She heard it third-hand from a coworker whose sister went to the same church as Tom. "I heard you moved out on your dad," the coworker said casually during a break. "That's rough." Mary didn't respond. "Valerie said you were freeloading," the coworker continued. "Is that true?" "No." "Well, she's telling people you owe them money." Mary looked at her. "I don't." The coworker shrugged and went back to her coffee. Mary's phone buzzed constantly for the first week. Texts from distant relatives, calls from people she barely remembered. Her Aunt Linda, her mother's older sister, left a voicemail that was equal parts concern and accusation. "I don't know what happened between you and Valerie," Linda said, "but you need to respect your father's wife. He's been through enough. Call me back." Mary didn't call back. Another cousin sent a text. "Heard you're having issues. Family is family. Work it out." Mary deleted it. The hardest part wasn't the accusations. It was the assumption that she was wrong by default. That whatever happened, she must have caused it. That leaving was the same as betrayal. No one asked for her side. No one questioned Valerie's version. Mary was the younger one, the one who had lived at home, the one who should have been grateful. She stopped checking her phone after the first week. At work, she kept her head down. At home, she unpacked slowly, filling the small apartment with second-hand furniture and cheap dishes. She bought a coffee maker and a desk lamp. She put up curtains. She made it hers. 2 weeks after she moved out, Tom called again. This time, Valerie wasn't in the background. "I went to the bank," Tom said. Mary waited. "Your name's on everything," he continued. His voice was quiet. "Electric, water, taxes. Every payment for the last 2 years. I told you that. Why didn't you ever say anything before?" "I did," Mary said. Valerie laughed. Tom didn't respond for a long time. Mary could hear him breathing, slow and heavy. She imagined him sitting at the kitchen table, the bills spread out in front of him, finally seeing the truth. "I didn't know," he said finally. "I know." She said he stopped. "She said you were just living here, that you didn't contribute." "I know what she said." Why didn't you tell me? Mary closed her eyes. Because you weren't listening. Tom was silent. You married her 6 months after Mom died, Mary said. Her voice was steady, but something sharp edged into it. You let her move in. You let her change everything. You didn't notice when Mom's pictures came down. You didn't notice when I started hiding groceries. You didn't notice when she treated me like I didn't belong in my own house. Mary. I'm not angry, Dad, she said. I'm just done. She hung up. The call she didn't expect came a week later. Tom's younger brother, Frank, lived 2 towns over and worked at the same county garage. He and Tom had been close once, but they drifted after Mary's mother died. Frank had tried to stay in touch, but Tom shut everyone out after the funeral. Frank called Mary on a Saturday morning. I heard what happened, he said. Mary was folding laundry. Yeah. Tom told me about the bills. Good. He also told me what Valerie said. Frank paused. That's not right. Mary didn't respond. I don't know what your dad's thinking, Frank continued. But you didn't deserve that. You've been carrying that house for years. And she acted like you were a burden. That's not how family works. Mary felt something tighten in her chest. Thanks. If you need anything, Frank said, call me. She promised she would. It was a small thing, but it mattered. For the first time since she left, someone had asked for her side. Someone had believed her without needing proof. It didn't fix anything, but it helped. A month after Mary moved out, Tom and Valerie had their first real argument. Mary didn't witness it, but she heard about it from Frank, who heard it from a neighbor who lived 2 doors down from the house. It started over the electric bill. The power had been shut off twice in 3 weeks. Each time, Tom had to call the utility company, pay the past due balance with a credit card, and wait for reconnection. The fees added up. So did the frustration. Valerie insisted it wasn't her job to manage the bills. Tom insisted she lived there too, so it was... The argument escalated. Voices rose. The neighbor heard it through the open kitchen window. Tom finally demanded to know why Valerie had never noticed Mary was paying everything. Valerie admitted she knew. She'd known the entire time. It was her responsibility, Valerie said. She lived here for free. Tom stared at her. She wasn't living here for free. She didn't pay rent. She paid everything else. That's not the same thing. Tom sat down at the kitchen table, his hands shaking. He looked at the stack of overdue notices, the collection letters, the disconnection warnings. He thought about Mary, 21 years old, sitting in the dark kitchen after the funeral, promising to stay. He thought about her quiet efficiency, the way she handled everything without asking for credit or recognition. He thought about how Valerie had treated her. She was my daughter, Tom said quietly. She was family. Valerie crossed her arms. She was an adult who needed to grow up. Tom looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone he didn't recognize. Someone who measured relationships in transactions. Someone who saw love as leverage. I think you should leave, he said. Valerie laughed. You're joking. I'm not. The argument didn't end there. It stretched over days, then weeks. Valerie refused to leave. Tom started sleeping on the couch. The house became a battlefield, with every conversation turning into an accusation. Mary heard about it through Frank, who heard it from Tom directly. She listened without commenting. She didn't feel satisfaction. She didn't feel vindication. She just felt tired. 2 months after Mary moved out, Valerie insisted on a family dinner. The invitation came through Tom, who called Mary on a Wednesday evening. Valerie wants to clear things up, he said. There's nothing to clear up. She thinks there is. Mary hesitated. Who else will be there? Just us. And maybe Frank. Why Frank? Because he offered. Mary thought about refusing. She thought about blocking their numbers and moving on. But something in her father's voice stopped her. He sounded small, defeated. Fine, she said. When? Saturday, 6 o'clock. Mary arrived at 5:58. She parked on the street and stared at the house. It looked the same, peeling paint, crooked shutters, overgrown grass. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place she used to know. Frank's truck was already in the driveway. Mary walked up the front steps and knocked. Tom answered. He looked older, grayer, thinner. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, kid," he said. "Hi, Dad." She stepped inside. The house smelled different. The furniture was rearranged again. Valerie's decorative pillows were gone. Mary noticed the blank spot on the wall where one of Valerie's photos used to hang. Frank was in the living room, standing with his arms crossed. He nodded at Mary. "You good?" he asked. "I'm fine." Valerie emerged from the kitchen, holding a casserole dish. She set it on the table with exaggerated care, then turned to face Mary. Her smile was tight. "Thank you for coming," Valerie said. Mary didn't respond. They sat at the table. No one spoke. Tom served the casserole, something with chicken and rice, and they ate in silence. The tension was suffocating. Mary could feel Valerie watching her, waiting for an opening. Finally, Valerie set down her fork. "I think we should talk about what happened," she said. Mary looked at her. "Okay." "You left very suddenly," Valerie continued. "You didn't say goodbye. You didn't give us any warning. You just disappeared. I moved out." "You abandoned us," Valerie corrected. "You left us struggling. The power got shut off. The water got shut off. We couldn't pay the bills because you stopped helping." Mary felt something cold settle in her chest. "I stopped paying the bills I was paying." "That's not how family works," Valerie said. "Family helps each other. Family doesn't just walk away. Family doesn't treat people like burdens," Mary said quietly. Valerie's smile faltered. "I never treated you like a burden. You told me I didn't pay for anything. You told me I was freeloading. You were living here for free. I paid every bill in this house for 2 years." "That's not true." "It is true." Tom's voice cut through the room, sharp and sudden. He was staring at Valerie, his jaw tight. "Mary kept this house running. She paid the electric. She paid the water. She paid the property taxes. I didn't even know until I checked the statements." Valerie turned to him. "That was her responsibility." "It wasn't," Tom said. "She was helping me. She didn't have to do any of it." "She lived here," Valerie insisted. "She owed us." "She was my daughter," Tom said, his voice rising. "She wasn't a tenant. She wasn't a guest. She was family, and you treated her like she was nothing." The room went silent. Mary sat perfectly still, watching her father. This was the first time he'd defended her. The first time he'd said out loud what she'd been trying to tell him for months. It didn't fix anything. It didn't erase what had happened. But it mattered. Valerie stared at Tom, her face flushed. "I can't believe you're taking her side." "There are no sides," Tom said. "There's just the truth." Valerie stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She looked at Mary with something close to hatred. "You ruined this," Valerie said. "You ruined everything." Mary met her gaze. "I just stopped paying the price for being convenient." Valerie grabbed her purse and walked out. The door slammed behind her. Her car started a moment later, and she drove away fast, tires squealing on the pavement. Tom sat at the table, his head in his hands. Frank reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "You okay?" Frank asked. Tom nodded, but he didn't look okay. He looked like someone who'd just realized he'd been living in a house built on lies. Mary stood. "I should go." "Wait," Tom said. He looked up at her, his eyes red. "I'm sorry." Mary didn't respond. "I should have seen it," Tom continued. "I should have known. I was so caught up in trying to feel normal again that I didn't see what was happening to you." "I know," Mary said. "Can you forgive me?" Mary thought about it. She thought about the 2 years she spent holding the house together. She thought about the nights she paid bills in silence, the mornings she left early to avoid Valerie, the constant, grinding weight of being unwanted in her own home. "I don't know," she said honestly. Tom's face crumpled, but he nodded. "I understand." Mary left without saying goodbye. The divorce took 6 months. Tom filed for separation first, citing irreconcilable differences. Valerie fought it. She hired a lawyer and demanded half of everything: the house, the savings, the truck. She claimed she'd been financially dependent on Tom, that she'd given up career opportunities to support him. The lawyer Tom hired, an older woman named Judith who specialized in family law, tore Valerie's case apart. "She worked part-time by choice," Judith said during a meeting at her office. "She had no dependents. She contributed minimally to household expenses, and she knowingly allowed another party to shoulder the financial burden for 2 years without contributing." Tom sat in the chair across from her, looking exhausted. "Can we just get this over with?" "We can," Judith said, "but you need to be prepared for her to drag this out. People like Valerie don't let go easily." She was right. Valerie contested everything. She demanded mediation. She accused Tom of hiding assets. She claimed emotional distress. The process was slow, ugly, and expensive. Tom called Mary once during the worst of it. "I don't know if I can do this," he said. His voice was hollow. "You can," Mary said. "She's making it impossible." "That's what she does." Tom was quiet for a moment. "Do you hate me?" "No." "Do you hate her?" Mary thought about it. Hate required energy. It required caring. She felt neither. "No," she said. "I just don't think about her." Tom laughed bitterly. "I wish I could say the same." The divorce finalized in the spring. Valerie got a small settlement and moved out of state. Tom kept the house, though he could barely afford it. He sold the truck and bought a cheaper car. He picked up more shifts at the county. He learned how to pay bills on time. Mary saw him occasionally. They met for coffee once a month, sitting in a booth at the same diner where he'd first told her about Valerie. The conversations were careful, polite, and strained. They talked about work, the weather, and Frank's kids. They didn't talk about Valerie. They didn't talk about the past. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was maintenance, a way to keep the connection from breaking completely. One evening, about a year after the divorce, Tom called Mary with a question. "Do you think I'll ever fix this?" he asked. "Fix what?" "Us." Mary looked around her small apartment. She'd added more furniture, a bookshelf, a decent couch, plants on the windowsill. It was starting to feel like home. "I don't know, Dad," she said. "I think some things just stay broken." Tom was silent. "But we can still talk," Mary added. "We can still be in each other's lives. It just won't be the same." "I miss how it used to be," Tom said quietly. "So do I," Mary said. "But that was before Mom died. And we can't go back to that." Tom didn't argue. They talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. Mary hung up and stared at the phone. She thought about her mother, about the house, about the version of herself that used to believe family meant unconditional support. She didn't believe that anymore. Family was complicated. Family could fail you. And sometimes the only way to survive was to walk away. Valerie tried to contact Mary once, about 6 months after the divorce. The message came through Facebook late at night. Mary almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of her. The message was long, rambling, and full of justifications. Valerie claimed she'd been misunderstood. She claimed Mary had been dramatic. She claimed the whole situation could have been avoided if Mary had just communicated better. The last line was the one that stuck with Mary. "You could have handled this like family." Mary read it 3 times. Then she typed a response. "I was family. You just didn't treat me like it." She hit send, then blocked Valerie on every platform. She didn't feel angry. She didn't feel triumphant. She just felt done. 2 years after she moved out, Mary got a promotion at work. She became the payroll manager, overseeing a team of 3. The raise was modest, but it was enough to move to a better apartment on the west side of town. The new place had 2 bedrooms, a small balcony, and a view of the lake. She furnished it slowly, carefully, buying things she actually liked instead of things she could afford. She hung art on the walls. She adopted a cat from the shelter, a gray tabby named Juno who slept on the couch and ignored her most of the time. She made friends at work. She went out on weekends. She started running in the mornings, looping through the park near the lake, watching the water shift from gray to blue as the sun rose. She built a life that was entirely hers. Tom came to visit once, bringing Frank and Frank's youngest daughter. They stood on the balcony and looked out at the water. Tom didn't say much, but he smiled. "You did good, kid," he said. Mary nodded. "Thanks." It wasn't the reconciliation he wanted. It wasn't the relationship they used to have, but it was something. And for now, that was enough. Some of her relatives still believed Valerie's version of events. They avoided Mary at family gatherings, whispered when she walked by, treated her like she'd committed some unforgivable betrayal. Mary stopped going to the gatherings. She sent cards at Christmas. She responded to the occasional text. But she didn't explain herself. She didn't defend her choices. She didn't try to change their minds. She learned something important. You can't make people see the truth if they're committed to believing a lie. And trying to do so only exhausted you. One evening, Mary sat on her balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sun set over the lake. Juno was curled up beside her, purring softly. The air was cool, and the sky was streaked with orange and pink. She thought about her mother, about the house, about the girl she used to be, the one who thought staying meant strength, who thought enduring meant love. She thought about Valerie, wherever she was, still convinced she'd been wronged. She thought about her father, alone in the house, trying to make sense of the wreckage. And she thought about herself here, in this small apartment, with her cat and her job and her quiet, ordinary life. She didn't forgive Valerie. She didn't need to. Forgiveness wasn't a requirement for healing. You could move on without it. You could build something new without tearing down the old. You could just let it go. Mary finished her wine and went inside. She fed Juno, made dinner, and settled onto the couch with a book. The apartment was quiet, peaceful. It wasn't the life she'd imagined at 21. It wasn't the family she'd hoped for, but it was real. It was hers, and she'd stopped paying the price for being convenient.